Ladies and gentlemen, it's that time again. From the deepest jungles to the outmost reaches of space and beyond the veils of death itself, the Bald and Bonkers boys are back for another episode. It's no secret that you won't know what will happen next, but Dakota Frandsen and Chris Mole promise that all bets are off. Viewer discretion and straitjackets advised. These two idiots live up to the name.
Good morning, Vietnam! Oh, just kidding. Wrong show. Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. You're probably wondering, wait a minute. Where's the other boob? Well, boob got a girlfriend now. And he decided to go off on a little scallivant, a little adventure together. I'm not spreading any hate on that, you know. I'm happy for Chris. As much as I tease him, I am. You know, it's a miracle that he's able to find anybody. And putting them side to side. Jenny, I love you, but you and Chris kind of look like brother and sister. Anyway. So, we could probably just give this a couple minutes until people come in. I know that Trader Dots is in the room with Chris right now. You're on the wrong show! Oh, well, that's what replays are for. So, how is everybody? Are you actually able to hear me? Because I don't have a talkative co-host to tell me if something's wrong this time. All right, I opened myself in another tab and we should be good to go. So, quite a bit going on in the world now, isn't there? It's almost difficult to keep track of this stuff, you know? So much stuff going on. Recently, the AARO just launched their own website, the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. It's basically the new UFO task force founded by the United States government. And figured you could expect the underwhelming content from a government-run website. I mean, come on! If you're going to be putting stuff out there, make some effort, man. Come on. Oh well, that is just me being a nudie designer, bitch. Oh, it is interesting to see what all they're putting together. They do have some UAP videos. It does kind of indicate right on the website that there will come a time later on when I think I saw something different pop up on this website earlier. It does indicate that they will open up the reporting for civilian reports. So which is a good step, because this approach of only trying to get government insiders, while that does bring the focus out on what's actually going on, it leaves out a huge dynamic. Yes, the civilians, they may not know what all the government up to, but they may see something the government people ain't seeing. Who knows? How's it going, Dots? Slightly different show today. We don't have a crazy Scottish person trying to overpower the show. Love you, Chris, like a brother, but sometimes, man, you just get them. Anyway. And obviously, with this government attention, we get a lot of concerns about these programs being utilized to eyeball eyewitness reports. And granted, it would be easy. People are literally just going to be forking over their information to these government agencies. There's numerous reports and several individuals that have come forward saying that people have been suppressed, intimidated, and potentially even killed for talking about the things they witnessed. So unfortunately, we got a little bit of PTSD going on. But as always, we're not going to get down to the truth until people start talking. We're not going to understand what all is happening until people start talking. That's true in just about any perspective when it comes to paranormal. Granted, you're going to have skeptics, and there's nothing wrong with that, as long as they're not total assholes. Granted, we need people to be able to filter out the bullshit. And it's something that a lot of people get pissed off at me for saying too, because I don't like how a lot of this turns into like a Dungeons and Dragons type mentality. This fantastical, oh, the beings from the sky and the little fairies and the monsters. Ooh! Okay. And you wonder why we're so easily targeted. And one thing I've honestly didn't understand is the level of claimed espionage. Not even from any CIA, KGB motherfuckers. You know? Just people in these cliques that, oh, this person said this. Why? For the last few weeks, I've been trying to bring out some retired CIA officers to discuss everything that's kind of going on in the world, operations they conducted, and it's actually not that hard to try to track them down. Several of these individuals, whether they were former CIA, FBI, NSA, they usually go into starting their own businesses after they retire, utilizing the skills they've acquired from the business. And you got to admit, now for me, for someone who's grown up around military and law enforcement influence, this is day-to-day conversation for me. This stuff does not intimidate me. Now, granted, there are exceptions, and usually it's finding out someone you care about has been caught in the crossfire of something pretty nasty. And that has happened to me on numerous occasions. But also, bouncing back to these group dynamics, these clique wars, if you will. People don't realize that this very behavior is what sets us up to divide, for division. It's perfectly healthy to want to have some sort of conversations about these topics. It's perfectly healthy. We need conversations to take place. We also need people willing to say, hey, I'm not 100% sure this is true. This is what leads me to believe to this conclusion. It's okay. It's a discussion. Maybe I've said it 1,000 times before that maybe when these discussions take place, the other person may point out something you don't know, or you may point out something the other person doesn't know. It's perfectly natural to have these conversations take place. And it's not necessarily a full-on government cover-up. In order to really understand how should I put this? The trickle effect, if you will. How it all runs down. You just need to look at the very dynamics of the people who are interested in supernatural like topics. Obviously, supernatural, paranormal, these being such relative terms, they are relative to the cultures, to the time, places, to the people. And being that it's so varied and affects so many people, you're going to bring in just about every fraction of life. Personality clashes. It happens. It sucks. It's a nuisance, but it happens. But on the same light, one thing I've noticed frequently is that if I had to put a number on it, a good 90% of us, myself included, this is me being generous, a good 90% of us who are attracted to these topics usually got something going on up here. And just by me saying that, there's going to be individuals who get offended, saying that, oh no, I'm not mentally ill. No, 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 no. 1 in 3 people. 1 in 3. Is speculated that I believe that's up to at least 1 in 3 people, average everyday citizen, has some form of mental illness. Now, granted, in many aspects, it does seem like that every human quirk is they're trying to put a label on every single little quirk that doesn't necessarily need it. But in the same light, being knowledgeable of these things can help you understand factors much further. Because we also had to acknowledge that with these specific type of traumas, a majority of what it fosters is almost narcissistic behavior. And there's several people. Predominantly ladies, but men are a bit more stubborn when it comes to acknowledging this part. There are several mental conditions, for lack of a better word, that have enough of a trauma base to where people start to develop narcissistic tendencies. Now, anybody can have these tendencies. It's perfectly normal. But these are the individuals who go to such an extent to try to make themselves look good that every part of what they do is only for self-fulfillment. And if the slightest thing comes up that threatens their ideals, their image, their beliefs, woo! If anybody's ever dealt with someone with borderline personality disorder, you're probably familiar with the walking on eggshells sensation. Again, I'm going to say this. This is not a judgment call. This is a statement of observation, a statement of facts. I'm going to say that now because there's going to be somebody who likes to stalk my pages, disliking every video, even though all that does is add to the algorithm. So thanks for the free publicity. There's going to be some people are going to be so riled up about what I say that they're going to do whole lives to try to think, oh, get a life! My God! Anyway, see how easy it is for me to go off on my own? Here, I'm just looking at the chat real quick. Dots, yeah. Governments want us to stop talking. But that's not really productive, is it? It can be argued that anything, say like the CIA, the finger gets pointed towards them to every major conspiracy these days, right? So let's pick on them. The CIA, a lot of what they train people to do, Now, mind you, I believe the cost, if you were to put a price tag on all the training an appropriate CIA officer goes through, I believe they say that number is close to $2.5 million in training. A lot of what they teach their people to do is to accent what's already there. So, there was this conversation where a gentleman, Andrew Bustamante, he's He's the founder of Everyday Spy. Like I said, he uses a lot of what he was taught during his time at the CIA as sort of a almost like a self-help course. It's honestly very interesting stuff. Check it out if you want. I'm not going to hold you to anything. There was an interview I caught with him. I bring him up a lot because I've been trying to get him on the show, but scheduling conflicts. He's a pretty popular guy. He went into this discussion about how case officers look for people to bring in as an asset. So obviously when we have this sort of scenario, our minds tend to automatically go to Hollywood examples, right? You know, big case of money, gun pointed at him, say, you're going to come work with us. No. When these case officers try to secure an asset, someone they want to secure a job for them, they do extensive background searches. This is where the finding out about financial problems, if a loved one is severely sick and is not getting the medical attention they need due to, financial reasons, their case being too risky, things like that. They case out these individuals who are in high priority locations. Then they simply approach them, say in a bar one night, and said, hey, I know you have this issue. Go for the example of, say, they have a kid in the hospital who's dying of a very serious illness and no doctors are willing to take a look at it. I know you have this issue. I know your son's not doing well. I want to help you. If you agree to what I'm about to tell you, I can have your son, all expenses paid, taken to this specific doctor. All his medical bills will be paid. All your travel expenses will even put you up in nice lodging so you can be there for your son as he recovers. But we need you to do this job. Obviously, they're going to train for the stranger response, the fight or flight, when you initially meet someone for the first time. Isn't basically if someone just automatically comes walking up to you, your first chances are your first response is like, who the hell are you? And that response gets heightened when that personal information comes forward. They call this a cold response. A warm response is when they have someone, start to become best friends with the subject and try to basically watch an individual close. The cold response is that, meeting somewhere like in a bar, saying, hey, I can help you. Let's help each other out. Normally, it does not result to immediately busting out a load of unmarked bills and having a gun pointed at you. Usually, the goal of the conversation is to, at the very least, slide this person a business card with their number on it. Say, if you don't feel like answering now, call this number and we'll give you the full details about everything. What the CIA usually counts on is that person is not going to want to talk about what just happened. Because, again, it sounds outlandish. I mean, who the hell would just walk up to somebody and automatically start spilling stuff like that, right? Secondly, there's that fear response from an outside person. Say it was a father who was at a bar, trying to decompress before going home, goes home to go tell his wife. Immediately, the wife might just get a little scared, as in, what the hell were you doing to draw the CIA's attention? Why do they know about you, right? So, thirdly, The third response that the CIA usually accounts for, and going with the sick child response, is the guilt that that the person they were trying to secure as an asset, that they're going to count for guilt. Say if it was a loved one who died, there's going to be that guilt that they could have done something to help prevent that person from passing away. And again, the only goal for this initial conversation, for this initial meeting, is just to slide in the business card with the phone number. And it is very rare for their agents to be compromised when they conduct these. They are very good at what they do. In social media environments, that action becomes a hell of a lot easier. If there is a specific target they want to discredit, it is not hard to create fake accounts. VPNs can easily be utilized as a flick of a switch. Anybody who pays enough for an antivirus software has access to this. But just think, say like, I have my Amazon device right there, your Google Home services, your Series, and all of that. That tech's been around since the 80s. So obviously, genuine disinformation agents, let's go with that term, are going to have access to stuff that's just a little bit faster. But also in the same light, these people are trained very well on how to hide. The primary recruit is someone who already has anxiety. The ideal recruit, I should say, is someone who already has anxiety, who's already self-primed for something to go wrong, able to process information on a dime. And then they're also going to be too young. They're going to be young and active enough to operate within the field, but they're going to be too young for them to really ask questions as to why they're being asked to do the things they do. But another thing you got to remember is with these disinformation agents, I'm just going to put this one out there. More often than not, the names they are given are very close to what their real name is. This is a tactic that I was actually taught during my bounty hunting days, where if I had to go into a location utilizing a fake name, I needed to use something that was close to my real name, so that even if I don't respond at first, I can just brush it off as, oh, I'm not paying attention. Or, needless to say, there's still enough of a similarity in the name chosen that you still react. Now, obviously, when you go through extensive training, you're going to be able to have almost Hollywood actor level, personality switches. And unfortunately, a lot of people are not going to see through it. Just look at the number of people who try to call phone numbers they see on television. Very rarely does that connect to an actual phone number. I forgot to turn down my phone. I'm so sorry. But how does this all affect into trauma, group dynamics, especially within spirituality communities? Spirituality, New Age, UFO, whatever. They all fall under the same umbrella eventually. Trauma responses can actually affect people on such a deep level that the DNA is rewritten. Maybe this is some sort of survival tactic that goes under the premise that basically, if a parent goes to do something, they survive long enough to have children, there's a pretty good chance that child is going to experience something very similar. So we put that paranoia in the DNA, that child may have a chance. Or at least that's the prevailing theory, the one that makes the most sense. Anybody else seeing this kind of humanoid blue right here? It's like right where my finger's at. Anybody else seeing that? Hello there. Anyway. Look, it's the CIA trying to remote view on me. Do you enjoy the show? Could you send the sexy KGB women? See, cream up. Trauma is helpful to distance yourself when you can. Here's the thing. Going back to the narcissistic personality traits that come up, when that trauma gets triggered, that person's not going to know much difference between whether or not it is this rough feeling they're getting is because something about what this person is saying doesn't make sense, or is it I'm losing track of my wording here. This whole idea that trust what your inner bullshit meter does. If your inner bullshit meter goes off, then yeah, that person's probably lying. Here's the thing though. With these narcissistic trauma responses, that ability gets compromised. If you're not sitting back and trying to process the information carefully, if you're trying to process it on the fly, you're going to start attacking. And you may end up accidentally attacking individuals that you really need on your side. Think about it. Democratic, Republican, left versus right, liberal, conservative, red, blue. All these measures are ingrained aspects of our society which allow for divide and conquer. And unfortunately, the only thing that beats a narcissist is psychopathy. People who are so driven by achieving a goal, they are willing to do anything. The difference between a narcissist and a psychopath lies within what their end game is. You see, a psychopath, a lot of companies' CEOs fit that profile. They fit the same psychological profilings as we understand them as some serial killers. And that's more on the high functioning end. A narcissist just wants to build up their own self-image. And usually when they're not getting the responses they think they earn, they deserve, that they should get, ooh, you're going to watch them burn. You're going to watch them burn quickly. They're going to fire off. They're going to start coming up with false information on the fly. Needless, they'll be looking to just burn all bridges. And it's a devastating thing to watch. Because in the same light, narcissists and psychopaths, they a lot of times share the same aspect of charisma. They can quickly become someone respected or someone loved. But also in the same light, for as long as humanity has been around, we have been pack animals. Tribalism. We want to protect those that are around us. Is one of the reasons it is speculated that the modern day human managed to survive, but Cro-Magnon men, officially as a pure species, went extinct. Because Cro-Magnon, even though they were virtually identical to modern humans, to where if one were walking around today, they would be indistinguishable. They tend to be solo. They tend to work by themselves. Whereas modern humans, the reason why we managed to survive as long as we have is because we've seek out our tribes, relationships, family members. We seek out people that benefit us in some way. And yes, in many ways, that is almost narcissistic of us. But that's how we managed to survive all this time. And it's a beautiful thing when people can actually start coming together. But in the same way, it can easily be the end of us. You always hear about instances of corporate espionage, things like that. In paranormal communities, there's also, I've seen it so many goddamn times, it is ridiculous. Where they're saying, oh, I think that person is fine. Oh, I think that's fine. First off, that's an insult to legitimate spies. Because at the end of the day, people are being assholes. But when it comes to the extraordinary situations we find ourselves in today, that is our reality. As I said before, trauma responses can be passed down into DNA. What the? Oh. Sorry. I was caught messages on little chat box that pops up rarely. Anyway. Dots, you're right. It is an ego problem. And it's a situation where as long as that ego gets attacked, that person becomes compromised. And as much as they allow themselves to be attacked, they will eventually crumble. Finding a genuine support system of people willing to slap you upside the head if you start steering wrong, that can be helpful in many ways. But how does this affect situations like MK Ultra, trafficking victims? The people behind these programs may have not even realized the repercussions of what they were doing. How extensive the damage goes. You traumatize one person, chances are that trauma is going to affect that person's behavior for quite some time. The willpower it takes to break those cycles is astounding. And I commend anybody able to do so under whatever circumstances may have been presented to you. Parents who have been abducted to these MK projects, They get abducted, go on later in life, have children of their own. Sometimes the trauma kicks up when the kids start happening. These kids already dispositioned to this trauma because of what was passed down to them are more susceptible to going down a downward spiral. And when you even think about it, one could argue that it's roughly the 1940s during the Second World War when this spiral truly started kicking in, right? We can just look at the home dynamics that any person sees these days. How many of you are able to simply sit down at the end of the day and have dinner with your family? As in sit down in the dining room, have dinner, discuss your day. How many of you have that right now? How many of you have kids or as kids had your own little keys to get in the house because chances are nobody was going to be home by the time you got off school? Just about every major political movement has been infiltrated. Is it fully CIA? Yeah, probably. But if it is genuinely CIA and they go to the extent where it sounds like something out of a movie when they try to pull their shit, you know they're freaking out. They don't want to pull out those stops because they know it's not really effective and it gets them exposed, or at least a heightened risk of exposure. And that's actually a point I want to go to next here in a little bit. There, Robin, I just saw your message pop up. I don't know if you saw it pop up on the screen. Should be right about here. I gotta reformat this damn thing. Every major movement has had some sort of infiltration. Maybe not all CIA, but a lot of it. But they also proved that when the people are panicked, the people can't focus and are easily triggered, they also know it doesn't take much. Take into consideration some of the biggest figures we actually know, like Elena Danan. The number of times hate starts stirring up right as she goes to talk about certain subjects. And I'm bringing this up because, as a lot of you know, there's a fairly recent one. Now, granted, I will say this in full honesty. When I first came across Elena's stuff, there was a scary level of familiarity with it. But I was also trying to maintain a level of skepticism because of how extraordinary certain things account. Now, as many of you also know who have been following this show, anytime the two of us cross winds, something weird always happens. I mean, hell, just asking a question on whether or not a certain species can survive for long periods of time without too much assistance here on planet Earth. A few hours later, as I get home from work, there's a fucking craft above my house. I should say something! But it's very rare for that to come up. See, my multiple personalities are coming through. When it comes to situations, especially like Elena, I will just to kind of wind myself down here. Someone of her background and knowledge, not counting ET side of things, would put her on a list. Our governments are based around fear and manipulation. Why are they panicked about UFOs? Because those guys have better guns than us. Simple fact. Sleeper cells have been activated here in the US that are believed to come from China. It is also speculated that we have also had some Russian sleepers pop up as well. Almost feels like there's a war that our government officials don't want to admit that there's a war going on. Because that just might tip the balance of fear a little too far. I mean, hell, rumor is they're getting ready to fire more lasers at us. Why not? The truth is that until we actually step back and try to understand why certain things are happening, we can't know for 100% sure. And I've seen on quite a few occasions where people try to say, oh, they must have had it in their soul contract to do these evil things. And while, yes, these conflicts aren't needed when it comes to the grand scale, it breeds evolution. So they're needed. No matter what level we reach, there's going to be some form of conflict. You can guarantee that. And you can see that that alone bothers some people who are likely need some serious intervention when it comes to their mental health. Because this idea that the ETs are going to be some omnipotent beings that are going to just, snap their fingers and all the world's issues are going to go away overnight. Or the ones that get bothered when there's details of genuine battles taking place and people dying. They say, oh, they're not more enlightened than us. They're a lot more like us than you realize. In many cases, they're probably even more human than us. But in the same light, the main reason their operations go the way they do is because they've had to learn, just as we're having to learn right now. To say that someone is bound by a soul contract to do evil, I'm honestly bothered by that. Let me say it. I'll say it this way. Maybe it's true. It's hard to tell. My personal belief is that only 1% of us who claim to have some sort of star connection are legit. The rest may have just misinterpreted them. Now, I fully admit I could be wrong on that number, but there's still a lot we don't know from our perspective. But in the same light, we talk about how soul contracts and stepping up against evil things and why people may conduct evil actions is a question of free will. Well, here's my statement on that. Isn't automatically assuming someone came here to do evil, to do these horrendous things, questioning free will as well? An example I'll give is the child of a pedophile who grows up. Chances are, if the news about that child's parent becomes publicly known about the actions they've done, that child will already have grown up with a voice inside their head saying, you're nothing, you're just like that, you're just like him, you're going to hurt people like him. People are going to have that voice. And some people go as far as killing themselves over that voice. not stopping to realize that they did not have that voice to begin with. I wasn't there. Where does that voice come from? Parents, bullies at school, teachers. You see, the little problem with that voice inside our heads that tells us we're no good? That bastard is damn good at impressions. So, and so that's something that a lot of people end up having to live with. But for children who've grown up with parents who have done awful things, there usually goes, in many ways, their path is already predetermined to split off into one of two options. Either one, they cave, become the monster they fear, or they spend the rest of their life keeping themselves in check to make sure that monster never comes out. Again, it comes back to a question of willpower. There may have been some sort of soul contract where they had to complete certain evil actions in order for some grand scheme to come into play. Guess what? Remember that oil pipeline that busted in the Pacific? It was, if I remember correctly? No, it was the Atlantic. The oil pipeline that blew up under the water in the Atlantic that a lot of news agencies were immediately trying to blame on the Russians. Then a couple months later, it was starting to come out that that was a sabotage mission done by the Americans. Exactly. It happens. It happens. And more often than not, if you find yourself in the focus of these individuals who are so bothered by competition, chances are you are doing something right. And we are in a society that rewards greed. It just happens. But in the same light, we also have to acknowledge that the options to do incredible things, the things that we were told that we were never able to do in the first place, are already here. And if you're not exactly sure how to pull it off, it's not that hard to find the information. When these individuals start to stir up trouble, you can say your piece all you want, but the most effective way to shut it down is not give them the time of day and move on. It's like something I always used to joke around with some relatives of mine. It's like saying, you got all that shit you're dealing with. I'm gonna go over here and have some fun. And yeah, money may be tight right now, but it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much to make things happen. And it's not going to be until we all develop just the right amount of psychopathy to where we are dedicated to fulfilling our mission. Truth is, at the end of the day, there's no such thing as good and evil. They're just labels to conflicting agendas. But in the same light that it's up to you to decide what you what your path becomes. There's still a lot of people that are going to need help, and ignoring them is only going to hurt us all in the
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today, ladies and gentlemen. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe anywhere you see Bald and Bonkers for even more insanity. Be sure to spread the love to the Bald and Bonkers boys' other endeavors. And a special thank you to our audience, guests, and everyone else who helps make this crazy ride happen. Amazing things are ahead. Learn more by visiting www.baldandbonkers.net. See you next time. Much love and take care.